Today is August 8th, 2018. My name is Joe Todd. This is an interview with Mitch Huth in Bartlesville, Oklahoma. Sir, where were you born?
I was born in Canby, Minnesota, July 6, 1966.
What's the name?
Canby, C-A-N-B-Y.
Okay, Minnesota. And when's your birthday?
July 6, 1966.
1966. Who is your father?
Carl Huth.
And your mother?
Is Elizabeth Huth. Her maiden name is Warme, W-A-R-M-E.
Okay. You go through school in Canby?
No, actually, I went to school kind of all over the place. We moved around quite a bit. I started out, we had a Canby address, but I went to school in Madison, Minnesota, and then we moved to Wilmer, Minnesota, and I stayed there for, 6 years or so, something like that, and then I moved to the Twin Cities and went to a few different schools there.
Okay. What year did you graduate high school?
1984,
In Minneapolis?
yeah, Hopkins.
Okay. What kind of work your father did?
He was a farmer and a plumber, kind of jack of all trades.
Okay. Did you work on the farm?
No, not a lot. I lived on the farm as a kid, but then we
Okay.
moved to town.
Okay. Who was your favorite teacher?
My favorite teacher. To be honest with you, I can't remember his name, but I had a health teacher in like 8th grade that was a favorite of mine, but I can't remember his name. But he was very helpful in a lot of things.
Okay. So, was that in Minneapolis?
Yes.
Okay. Okay. What did you do for recreation in high school?
I got in trouble. That was my recreational activity. Did a lot of bike riding, I always been a reader. I spent a lot of time reading my whole life. So, yeah, in high school, hanging out with the wrong people, getting into trouble. That's why I had to go in the military.
You played sports in high school?
Not in high school. I played sports. Me and my brothers, we like playing pickup hockey and doing things like that. Organized sports when I was in elementary and middle school. I joined teams, but then when I was in high school, I wasn't good enough to be on any team.
What did you do after high school?
Well, actually, I joined the Army in, what would it be, shortly after, like in the fall of '84. So I didn't do much. I worked for my uncle for a little while here in Oklahoma, and then I went to basic training.
Okay. Where did your uncle live here in Oklahoma?
Miami,
Miami.
Oklahoma.
What's his name?
O.B. Edwards.
O.B. Edwards. Okay. You recall what month you joined the Army?
Yep, November 13th, 1984.
November 13th. Why did you join the Army or the Navy, Marines, or the Air Force?
Well, because when I was a kid, I loved playing with my G.I. Joes and Army men and all that kind of stuff, so it was like, it just seemed like that was where I was supposed to do. I didn't really give any of the other services much. I just kind of had it in my mind that I was going to go. And the reason I joined the Army was initially I was going to do a 3-year hitch, and I was getting a good, the Army College Fund, the GI Bill Army College Fund, whatever it was called at the time. And so that's really the reason. I was going to go play soldier and kind of live out that sort of fantasy that I had when I was a kid. And so that was the plan. I would get that out of my system, and I would get out, and I'd be a little bit more mature, and I'd go to college. That's what my plan joining the Army was.
Where'd you go for your basic training?
Fort Knox, Kentucky, I went to one-stop unit training, so it was basic and advanced altogether.
Okay. Tell me about basic.
Well, it was a kind of a blessing and a curse to be with the same drill sergeants for like 14 weeks or whatever. I think it was 14 weeks of training. So I was with a really good platoon, and I had a lot of fun. I'm still in touch with some people that I went to basic training with through Facebook and things like that. So I had memories of cold nights on guard duty and trying to stay awake on fire duty, and some of the crazy things that happened
Like
at
what?
basic training.
What happened?
One of the crazy things that happened was I was a squad leader, and my squad was in charge of cleaning the orderly room. So every night we had to take all the cleaning stuff. It was about a block away to the orderly room. And one night when we were coming back from that, some distraught kid had tied a buffer cord around his neck and threw the buffer out the window, the second floor window. But what he did was he left too much cord on there, because that buffer hit the sidewalk and broke into pieces, and it hit the sidewalk right as the drill sergeant was coming out of the door. But it didn't pull him out the window like he wanted it to, and so he's standing there with this buffer cord tied around his neck and the broken buffer, and that drill sergeant said, "Don't move." And so they made him pay for the buffer too.
No, buffer.
Floor buffer,
Floor
you know?
buffer. Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Trying to commit suicide?
Yeah, I guess. He was trying to hurt himself bad enough to get out of the deal or whatever, because that was, in those days, you know, it was, nowadays they just want to kick you out, but back when I joined, it was like, you're in the Army now, you ain't going nowhere, kind of thing.
Now, did you have basic and AIT together, or were they separate?
No, they were together. It was, so we started, I was in, going for 19 Echo M60 A3 tanks. So by the fourth week, we already started to learn about tanks.
What type of training did you have in basic?
Can you be more specific?
Well, did you have like the force marches, calisthenics, obstacle course?
Yeah, I mean, we did those things, but we didn't do at the same rate as like the infantry. Like, we had some road marches that we had to do, but we didn't have to carry great big packs and all that stuff, because they felt we're armor. I mean, we're going to be on a tank wherever we go. We still had to do like 15-mile road marches, kind of like a milestone that you had to pass,
Okay.
things like that. But really, most of it was physical conditioning, and I mean, we still had to do obstacle course. We had to do some kind of like combat course, and we still had to do like the gas chamber and all that stuff. But it was really focused on tanks and armor.
And what tank were you training with?
I went to that training was the M60A3.
M60A3. What's the crew of the M60?
It's 4.
4.
Yeah, commander, gunner, loader, and driver.
And what position did you have?
Well, when I was on M60s, loader and driver.
Okay.
We ended up, well, from basic training, I had written in my contract that I was going to go to Europe. That was one of my other things I wanted to get out of my system, my fantasy about going. My family has German heritage, so I wanted to go to Germany and see all that and everything. And so when I got our unit over there, I was in first of the 37th Armor, which is called the Abrams Regiment. So eventually, by 1987, we were one of the first units to get the M1A1 Abrams.
Okay. Before we get there,
Okay.
how long did your basic and AIT last?
It was about 14 weeks.
14 weeks. And after that, where'd you go?
Then I was stationed in, I went to Germany, stationed in, at Katterbach Kaserne. Well, actually, no, Bismarck Kaserne in Ansbach military community.
So you went straight to Germany after your training?
Yep.
Tell me about the trip to Germany.
I had 3 days to get there, so I spent a couple days at home, and I hopped on a plane. I had to be in St. Louis by a certain day or whatever, and they linked a few of us up together, and then it was sort of uneventful. I don't really remember anything eventful happening. Went to 21st Replacement Detachment in Frankfurt, which sent us to a replacement detachment in the Ansbach community, and then within a day or two we got to our units.
And which unit?
It was Alpha Company 137 Armor.
137 Armor.
Yeah.
And it was based where?
In Bismarck Kaserne, in the community was Ansbach, Ansbach.
Okay. And now, what's the crew of the Abrams?
Same.
Same.
Yeah, it's
What-
4 people.
What gun does the Abrams have?
Well, the M1A1 that we ended up getting is a 120 millimeter smoothbore.
Okay. A smoothbore.
Yeah,
Why a smoothbore?
but higher velocity.
Okay.
And then they just put the spin on it by canting the fins on the projectile.
Okay.
Will introduce the spiral that it needs to stabilize it. But yeah, the velocity that they get out of it's a lot faster.
Now, how does the M1 compare with the M60?
Oh, about twice the horsepower, and the suspension was so much better. To give you and the stability system for the gun is so much better than the M60. So having that much horsepower, your speed was a lot better, and having that suspension, so you could go fast cross country and still have a smooth platform for the gun to fire off of.
Now, when did you arrive in Germany?
It was March of 1985.
What was the reaction of the local people to you in Germany?
Oh, it was positive in that time frame. I mean, I never had any negative. It could have been the area that we were in or whatever, but it always seemed to be positive.
Now, where's Ansbach located? What
It's
part?
about 40 miles west of Nuremberg,
Okay. Okay.
so it's in Bavaria.
Okay. Now, the wall hadn't come down yet, had it?
No,
Okay.
not at that point.
Okay.
No, we had live ammunition on our tanks, and we were training for not if, but when the Soviets came across that border.
Yeah. You ever go up to the border between East and West Germany? Did you patrol the
Actually,
border?
Czechoslovakia.
Okay.
Yeah.
Did you patrol the border?
No, we went on tours, special tours that they gave to units that were first line of defense. I think it was supposed to make it more real in our minds what the deal was, you know. So we did it in civilian clothes, so they wouldn't know, but they'd take us on a tour along. And we could
See across the border?
Oh yeah, yeah.
Were the Soviet troops or East
Um,
German troops, or could you tell?
I don't know. They all kind of look the same. All this Eastern communist bloc countries, you know.
What did the border look like? What was it, like a wall in Berlin, or was
No,
it
it wasn't a
barbed
wall. It
fence?
was mostly like double chain link fence. At one point, the river was the border. They still had barbed wire and like obstacles and all that stuff in the river.
Mhm.
And there's dogs tied up on like dog runs
Mhm.
on the other side. That, I mean, they tied them up so that they were they could only get within inches of each other. But so there was no getting by them really, and all that. And then there's towers with guys looking at you through binoculars and stuff, and you know, they're all armed with machine guns and all that kind of stuff. So
What's your most vivid memory of Germany?
probably my most vivid memory of Germany is meeting my wife there. I met my wife there in July of 1986.
Where?
In Ansbach.
Ansbach.
Yeah, so, and we got married about 3 months later, and we're still married.
Oh, was she military?
No, actually, her father was her father was retired Air Force, and he was a civil servant over there,
Okay,
working for the Department of Defense,
okay,
and that's why she was there.
okay. And you were in Germany how long?
I spent just short of 3 years over there on that first tour. What ended up happening is after we were married, we toyed with the idea of whether I should re-enlist or not. Decided to get out, and we got out and moved to the Twin Cities in Minnesota. And long story short about that was when we were going to have child number 3, the employment prospects were really drying up. I don't know if it was just a bad time in the economy. I can't remember the details back then. But by May of '89, I came back in the Army. Then.
When you, in '89 you went back in the Army. Did you have to go through basic again, or?
No, I didn't, but I couldn't get back into armor. I wanted to go back into armor, but they wouldn't let me because I have a colorblind. I'm colorblind. Well, the first time they didn't have to. Back when I first joined, they didn't have to run that through a computer. I guess they just looked the other way because they needed people in armor. But this time the computer wouldn't let me go back into armor. But I wanted to, so I got to keep my rank, and I went into 16 Romeo, which is Vulcan crew member, which is the air defense gun system.
Okay. How big is the Vulcan?
Well, the Vulcan is like a 6-barrel Gatling gun kind of weapon system, high-speed, electric. It's 20 millimeter.
20 millimeter. Okay. Now, is it? How is it mounted? Where's it mounted? Is it?
Well, actually, there's 2 variations. One's mounted on a 113 armored personnel carrier, and then they also have a towed version.
Okay. Which did you prefer?
I preferred I was only on the mounted one. I was never the towed versions was only used in like airborne divisions and things like that.
And where did you take your training on the Vulcan?
In Fort Bliss, Texas.
Fort Bliss, Texas. I took basic there. How'd you like Fort Bliss?
I didn't like Fort Bliss. I wasn't a big fan of the desert, and so I spent May to the end of July, I think, down there.
89?
Yep.
Okay. And from Fort Bliss, where'd you go?
Then it went stationed in Fort Stewart, Georgia.
Oh.
Stationed in Fort Stewart from like August of '89 to May of '94.
Okay.
So close to 5 years.
Okay. Now, what's the crew of the mounted Vulcan?
It's 4. You got a driver, a gunner, a commander, and then they'd started carrying Stinger missilemen on there also.
How many rounds can you carry?
On a 1,200 in the drum, and then you'd probably have a little bit of extra, but there isn't much room extra, and it's just so heavy the suspension can't really take it. But 1,200 isn't that much for a weapon system that can fire 3,000 rounds a minute.
Yeah. Is it like an APC, the Vulcan?
Yeah,
Okay. Okay.
but there's not a lot of room in there because the weapon system takes up so much of the room.
Yeah. Okay. You're in '89. What do you think of Fort Stewart?
Well, it was hot, but at the same time, I really liked it. Because that was when I was in the 24th ID there, and the training was really good. The units that I was in there, I was in the 1st to the 5th, what they called air attack artillery. We never defend, we always attack. It was sort of like their motto. So officially they were an air defense artillery, but they called themselves air attack.
So you're 1st, the 5th, the 24th Division?
Yep.
Okay.
As in Bravo Battery, 1st of the 5th.
Okay.
So, and I met a lot of people that I really professionally, and then that's when I was promoted to sergeant while I was there, and became part of the NCO Corps, and I took my primary leadership development course, and also my basic non-commissioned officer course happened during that time frame. So that's sort of where I became a sergeant, was trained by some really good sergeants, and leadership principles and all those kind of things. And so that's kind of like what made me into the soldier that I became, because of the leadership and the quality of the training and the seriousness by which that unit took its training and things like that.
Now, where were you when the Berlin Wall fell?
I would have had to have been, I don't remember on the exact date, but it was November of 1989, I believe, is when the Berlin Wall fell. So I was at Fort Stewart. I was stationed in Fort Stewart.
What did you think when you heard that?
Well, it was kind of incredible to us. My mother-in-law is German, and so we have this German heritage in my family and my wife's family, and my wife at that point, she'd spent like 10 or 12 years over there at that time. So I mean, she knew Germany well. We had friends that were Germans. So it was pretty incredible to us, almost unreal. We just thought good things about it. And then we thought, too, that the possibility of war, declined. And then we started thinking about what it looked like to go back there. So in 1994, 1993 probably, my wife said, I want to go back to Germany. And I said, you better watch out what you wish for. She said, well, see if you can make it happen to go back to Germany. And so I put in a request. I talked to some people on the phone, and they said, and because I had been in Fort Stewart there for 4 years or whatever, it was time to move me. So they said, sure, we'll send you to Germany. So we initially going to Germany, we thought we were going to stay there for a double tour. We were going to volunteer to stay there again, but the unit that I got in over there was it was the exact opposite of where I just came. It wasn't good NCO leadership. It was a sham. I mean, the whole thing. I mean, we would go on 3-day evaluations where you're supposed to be getting tested and all these kind of things. Another squad leader in my platoon had connections, and he would know what our score was going to be before we even left. It was all based on if you're how well liked you are by the command or whatever.
Yeah.
So it was just a big waste of time and money, and I worked so far away from home that at Fort Stewart, I'd come home after PT and eat breakfast with the kids, and I'd come home at lunchtime and eat lunch with my wife and do things like that. So even though you had a long day, you got broken up. I left at 5:15 in the morning, and I never knew when I was coming home, because it just depended on what they felt like making us do that day or whatever. It was bad. So we got out of there as fast as we could, and we ended up in 1997. We got stationed in Fort Riley.
Now, where were you in Germany this time?
I was in the Wiesbaden-Mainz community in a place called McCully Barracks. That we used to say it was the People's Democratic Republic of 5-3 Air Defense Artillery, as it was run like a communist outpost. It's probably my least favorite duty. And then we had calamities happen, like our American vehicle blew an engine and all that kind of stuff. And then you got 4 kids, and so it just wasn't some very good memories. It had the potential to be in a great tour duty, but it just wasn't. And then economically it was bad because the mark rate went exactly exactly the opposite. In the 80s, you had this, you could spend like crazy and never be broke, and it was just the opposite.
Where were you when Saddam invaded Kuwait?
Actually, when we got alerted, I was on a run, and we didn't have 4 kids at that time. We only had. I'm trying to think. Okay, that's back at Fort Stewart. When Saddam invaded Kuwait, when we got alerted, I was on a run, and my wife started walking down the road, and she said to me, I just got a phone call, and somebody said, Victory Thunder. I don't know what that means. I said, I know what it means, and it's not good. So I had I think it was a day off from duty or something, and so I got my stuff together. I went in and trying to remember what day that was. I want to say it was like August the 4th or something like that. Because within a few days, I think within 4 or 5 days, I was on boat number 1 that left the United States for Saudi Arabia. I was on the first USNS Capella.
When did you leave?
I want to say, I'm going to guess, say it was like the 10th of August.
1990.
Yeah.
Where did you leave the States from?
From Savannah, Georgia.
What were you thinking on the ship heading out?
Well, I was thinking, we were briefed that there was a near 100% chance that we would be attacked. That's what the intel said. Because I think that they were thinking if it was us, well, we'd be sure that we were attacking them before they got here, you know. So that's what we were prepared for, and that's what we trained for every day, that we were going to have to defend that ship.
And what ship you on?
The USNS Capella, Capella. And so, yeah, we had like 4 Vulcans on the deck, plus we had Stinger missilemen around it. And then I'm sure, I don't remember, but I'm sure that, you know, we had cap flights going over, you know, where they thought, and I'm sure that the Air Force was going to be covering us somehow.
Were you in a convoy?
Well, I'm sure that we were, but you can't really see. They're not close enough to see each other. So, but yeah, I'm sure that we were protected in some manner.
Where were your quarters in the ship?
Well, these ships are fast sea lift ships, and they're actually not. They weren't designed to have military on them. They're only designed to have the crew. So what they did was they took out like what their recreation rooms and stuff were, where they had their ping pong tables or whatever. They moved all that stuff off of the ship, and they put up cots. So we were sleeping on cots wherever they could put us. And then, because there was about, I think, 100 soldiers on board. And then, and the bad part of it was, they put tea rations on there for us to eat, but they didn't pay attention to what they were putting on it. So, like, we had only two non-breakfast meals and 2 breakfast meals. So it was just like every other day, it was just alternating. And then some of the worst stuff that they had in tea rations. So
Tea rats.
yeah, it's not good. So that was, but it was about a 2-week voyage.
What kind of ship was it, Capella?
It's called a fast sea lift ship. That's what they called it. So it had like 6 or 7 decks full of, I mean, there was tanks and helicopters and, you know, HEMTT fuel vehicles and all that kind of stuff packed on that thing.
Did you train into abandoned ship?
We probably did some kind of training like that. or how to get in the lifeboats or whatever. I just don't remember
Okay.
it.
How'd you pass the time on the trip?
Oh, we wore out decks of cards. I mean, literally had cards that were like falling apart kind of thing. And reading books and they kind of thought about that. I think that the chaplains had boxes of paperbacks and stuff put on there, and there was some board games and some stuff like that. So, but then we were doing training and maintenance and all that kind of stuff too.
And the ship landed where?
In, I want to say, Dammam.
Was it? And was it in Arabia?
Yeah, in Saudi Arabia.
Was it Dhahran?
I want to say it was. You could look it up. I'm sure you can find out about the Capella, but I'm thinking it was Dammam in Saudi Arabia.
Was it on the in the Persian Gulf?
Yep. So we had to sail through the Suez Canal, go all the way around the thing, which was another adventure because the Egyptians, they would come on, and the captain actually had to bribe them with, he had pillowcases full of cartons of cigarettes, so that to get us, because otherwise, if you didn't bribe them, they would just stall. And so they came prepared to bribe their way through.
Tell me about, what did you do in Arabia?
Read a lot of books, because we were there, I think it was August 26th when we got there. So we were some of the first heavy forces. Like I said, I was boat number 1. So we were like, when the tanks came off of our boat was the first tanks. I mean, I think that the 82nd Airborne had some Sheridans there, but they're not really tanks. So yeah, when we got, so we were like there from the get-go, so to speak. And then my platoon got tasked, eventually my platoon got tasked when we divided up, and they started tasking us out to be the security, part of the security forces for the tactical division headquarters of the 24th ID. So whenever Barry McCaffrey, the commander of the 24th, whenever he went to sleep, or if he would have gotten killed or whatever, then the tactical headquarters would have took over. So we took over whenever he was down, and to command the division, and then that happened during combat stuff too. But so we were the security force. We were with a South Carolina National Guard MP unit and a tank platoon and us with security force for about 2 or 3 5.77 TOC vehicles and like some support personnel and stuff. So and we had to take all of our patches off, and we had to paint over all of our unit designations on our vehicles and everything, because they didn't want anybody to know that this was the tactical division headquarters. It was even amongst the rest of the division, only the people that needed to know knew that that's what that was. Yeah. So prior to going across the border into Iraq, we had moved one night. We moved that just by ourselves way over to the west of the neutral zone. Even we were the furthest west and the furthest north unit out of all the Allied units out there. So we were just like a couple miles from the border, just this little tank platoon and a Vulcan platoon, and so we were just kind of out there.
Where were you based in Arabia?
Well,
were you still in Dammam?
No, we moved out into the desert after a couple of days. They moved us out, and we were out in the middle of nowhere. We were near a small town.
Did you go up Capline Road?
That was only No, those guys, we were farther west than that. I mean, maybe when we did that swing west, we might have been on Tapline Road, but we didn't do a lot of traveling. We were sitting and waiting, and then once it got to the certain point before the attack, an air defense unit battery, then this platoon will go with this unit, and this platoon, they split you up to go with the priority, air defense priorities that the commander has.
What did you do in this time waiting for the war to start?
Well, there's a lot of maintenance to be done on a Vulcan. It has to be kept clean with all the sand blowing around and all that stuff. It was always cleaning weapons and always doing drills, and we had a competition of uploading. Well, there's certain drills. There's a book of drills to go through, and so we'd have a competition of who could do these drills on the gun the fastest and things like that. We also planned a pretty extensive Christmas party that we did, and we tried to make the holidays something that.
Were you allowed to have a Christmas party in Arabia?
Yeah.
Because our chaplain could not have a cross; he had to wear a happy face.
Well, we weren't in a very. I mean, we were just out in the middle of the desert.
Okay.
There wasn't anybody coming around seeing us. So, I mean, actually, there was a bit of a Christian revival. I wasn't a Christian at the time. I am now, but at the time, there was kind of a Christian revival in our unit, and they were having. I mean, they were in the mess hall. They'd be preaching and singing worship music and all that stuff every night. I mean, they were pretty getting into it. So, yeah, I don't think that would have flown very well if they would have said, if you don't like it, get out of here.
So, what was your average day in the desert? What'd you do?
Well, what we started doing after a while, we started having rotational days where you would actually have 1 or 2 days a week off, so to speak. But you still have to have your weapon and your protective mask with you, but other than you could stay in your PT gear and stuff. And so we'd have like volleyball tournaments and do stuff like that, you know. Or we eventually got a TV and a VCR that we put in the mess hall, and so there are people you could watch a movie or whatnot. Like I said, I read a lot of books, and but otherwise we tried to keep a routine, kind of like we did in the rear. Like, but I think we had 2 maintenance days a month where we, you know, you have to go through and check everything out and order parts and fix stuff. We they conducted live fire training. I mean, that was something we did. But a basic day was a lot of, we would fill up the day with first aid classes and do all those kind of common tasks and those kind of things and just keep training up. And we would do NBC training, a lot of NBC training, and you know, make sure that guys stayed proficient in putting their mask on and do all those kind of things. And they still did things like promotion boards and all those kind of things. So, and they just thought up a lot of original ways to kind of keep people busy. We had eventually we got some weights and did like a weight room and stuff like that. And, trying to find out if you were going to have hot water for showers or whatever, and do things like that. I mean, it was all, but there was a lot of downtime.
Yeah.
We just had to keep, I mean, reading letters. We used to, back in those days, we didn't have no cell phones or anything, so you get scheduled for a time, you could load up on a truck and you drive an hour to go make a phone call that, I mean, I was paying for phone calls 6 months after I got back, you know, and they didn't donate any of that stuff.
Yeah. What was the climate over there?
Oh, it was a lot hotter than I thought it was going to be. But, ironically, when I got over there, once you get climatized to that in a couple weeks, because I lived outside, I was there from August 26th to like March middle of March, I think, of '91, and I was only indoors 3 times that whole time. Otherwise, I was outside the whole time. So you get used to it, you get climatized to it, so that when nighttime comes, it's cold out. It feels cold. And in December, January, I mean, it got cold. It got down to frosted, but it was cold enough where guys were using their sleeping bags, and I was trying to resist using my sleeping bag as long as I could because I wanted it to stay clean. I knew that winter was coming, and you're going to want it, you know. So, but at about 4 o'clock in the morning in October sometime, I got up and I was freezing. And I said, I don't care, I'm getting my sleeping bag. And I jumped up there and I got my sleeping bag. And before I got off of the truck, we had a thermometer hanging on there. And I looked at the thermometer and it was 86 degrees. And I was freezing. But it's just what happens when you get, acclimatized to it.
Oh yeah, sandstorms.
Oh yeah, bad ones. Actually, on Christmas Day, we had a really bad sandstorm. So it put off our party. We were having like a dining in, like a military dining in. We were making it, so trying to make the day as special as we could. And so we were supposed to do it, I think, at 2 o'clock in the afternoon or something. And the sandstorm was so bad, we had to push it back. And I don't think we started till like 5 or 6 at night, where it finally calmed down enough. But sometimes it would be for days.
What quarters did you have over there?
Well, a lot of the time we were sleeping under a camel net. I mean, that was it. But then later on we got GP medium tents. That was it. We didn't have any air conditioning or any of that stuff.
What about laundry?
Oh, we washed our clothes in 20 millimeter ammo cans. We didn't have any, because they only issued us 2 sets of desert camouflage. So you're wearing a pair and you washed a pair. And then you just rotated them out that way. So you couldn't, I think that at Division or something, they probably had field laundries, but you couldn't send it away because by the time you get it, it would just, if you had 4 sets, you could probably send away a couple sets or whatever. We just didn't have them. So we just washed them, and it's so dry over there. We go to the Water Buffalo and you wash them in ammo cans, and then you wring them out real good and you hang them up, and they're dry in about an hour anyway.
Well, you informed us Saddam might use chemical weapons.
Oh yeah, we did a lot of chemical drills, and they had some false alarms which made some people panic, and yeah, we were informed. We also took those PB pills too. I can't pronounce what that is, but everybody knows what PB pills probably are. But yeah, and so we took those every 8 hours for like, I don't know, a couple weeks or something like that.
Now, up by the Iraqi border, were you patrolling the border?
No, we weren't part of any patrols.
Okay.
No, that's outside of the scope of air defense. So.
Now, did you see all the airplanes going over when the air war was going on?
Yeah, I saw quite a few of them. Had a scare one time. I had an A-10 circle around and come back in on us. Like he was checking out to make sure that we were friendly, and we were like, hey, don't shoot us. But we could see the B-52s way up there. We'd see their contrails and stuff going over, and it sounded like thunder coming a lot of times. But yeah, but we didn't see them that close up.
So when the Grand War started, what happened?
Well, when the ground war started, we went across like we normally, like we were going to. When we reached our first objective, we didn't meet in with what I was with, the tactical headquarters. We were traveling about half a mile behind the leading edge of the battle. So you could hear a lot of the battle. Didn't really see a lot of that. But when we got to our first objective, or our first like staging area for the next day or whatever, was early afternoon, and so. But they said we're going to keep going. We were only there for like half an hour, and they said we're going to keep going. The battle's going good, so we're going to keep moving. And so that's basically what we did, and we kind of just didn't stop. Essentially, I mean, for about those 3 days, we were just almost constantly on the move. You had to just kind of get sleep where you could.
What were you thinking crossing into Iraq? When the war started, what were you thinking?
Well, I mean, I don't know. I was kind of neutral in a way. I mean, obviously there was some adrenaline and stuff going, but it wasn't like, because I'd been in armor before, so, which was kind of like, you know, like the guys that are leading the way, or the tip of the spear, so to speak. And I knew that we were more of in a support role, and we were, you know, security. I had a really good assignment as far as safety go. I was feeling pretty safe at the time. We knew that we had air superiority and all that stuff, and I knew we weren't like right on the edge of the battle, so it wasn't like I was all that apprehensive. It wouldn't have been, not like I would have been if we would have been supporting an infantry company, or supporting which is what kind of we're trained to do, infantry or armor company, so you're right there in the thick of things. That would have been a little bit more tense, but I knew that, you know, we were with the assistant division commander, and so he wasn't going to be right up there with, it was going to be too bad, so I wasn't feeling too bad about it.
So you went into Iraq, did you get into Kuwait?
No, never saw Kuwait. I know nothing about no burning oil fields and all that stuff till I got home, and my wife had videotaped a lot of the news coverage and stuff. I was looking at someone going, what's up with these burning oil fields? I never saw, that's how far west we were.
Yeah.
You know, we made the big, we were the largest force to travel the furthest and the fastest in the history of warfare. The 24th Infantry Division did.
So where'd you stop?
Just short of Basra is where we stopped the night before the ceasefire. We stopped right in the middle of this MLRS, well, this artillery, almost seemed like an artillery battalion. I mean, there was MLRS and 155 howitzers that were going nonstop. They were prepping Basra for us to go in the next day, for the tanks to go in. And they were shooting those MLRS batteries as fast as they could load them. And it was just, we got there at like 2 o'clock in the morning. And we got, surprisingly, I got some sleep. And then the next morning, about 7:30, I walked over to the lieutenant's track and I said, so what are we doing today, sir? And he said, well, the war is going to be over in a half an hour. And I'm like, what? Kidding me. I didn't believe him, and I turned on the BBC, and they said, at 8 o'clock, it said, it's 8 o'clock in Iraq, the ceasefire has started. Well, those MLRS and those howitzers, they didn't stop shooting until about 8:20. I don't know if they just needed to use up some ammo or what, but they were, I was like, you ain't here, man, because they're still rocking on them.
So you went into Iraq, and then you headed east toward Basra?
Yep, so we came all the way up like that.
No,
well, actually from Europe.
Around Kuwait into...
Yep.
Yep.
That's why I never set foot in Kuwait. I was miles and miles from Kuwait.
Okay. What were you thinking when you heard the ceasefire was, the war was over?
I thought it was like, it was kind of incredible that it was, nobody expected it to end that fast. So that's just kind of like what it was for us. It was like, this is kind of crazy. All that for this, and it's kind of like sort of anticlimactic for us, where I was at. So I spent more time in Iraq after the war, or after the ceasefire, than I did, during combat. So.
What did you do after the ceasefire?
Well, actually, we got, not too long after the ceasefire, we were put in charge of security for a fuel dump, basically. They had these fuel bladders. I'd never seen them before or since. It's so big. I mean, they were like, I can't even tell you, they're just so huge. I don't even know how they filled them up. It was incredible, these fuel bladders, how big they were.
Now, the Army has a 10,000-gallon fuel bladder.
Yeah, it had to have been those, and there were several of them.
Yeah.
They're just massive. And so So we were in charge of, we were security for this fuel dump. And so as these units are redeploying back to Saudi Arabia, and they're stopping there for fuel, and then we had, some of our guys got put on details where they'd filled up these sandbags. I don't know if, I guess these were donations by some companies or something, because they had like, I don't know, ravioli and a bunch of good stuff to eat, because these guys have been eating MREs for all. So we had these sandbags that they'd put together off of these pallets of all this kind of like microwavable kind of food, you know. And so they'd just say, "How many people in your vehicle?" They'd say 5, and then, so they'd give them 5 sandbags full of these goodie bags, kind of, and then while they're filling up their tracks. So we did that for, I don't know, a week or so, and then they said, one day they said, in 2 hours, there's somebody coming to relieve you guys. When they get here, then you guys roll. So we rolled out, and when that happened, and we got across the border into Saudi Arabia. Thought that was great. And then they directed us off of this, we were on some MSR Yankee, I think it was. And they directed us off, and there was this huge pit. And they said, throw all of your ammo in there. I mean, I can't even tell you, it almost looked like a gravel pit. It was so big, this pit was. And so we dumped all of our ammo, because all that ammunition, once it goes into the drum, you can't reissue it. You know, no. All of that, because our ammunition, when it has to be certified when it comes out of an ammunition plant. Because if you try to put that back in the cans with all that sand and all that stuff, and then somebody, you know, and then somebody in the future in war needed that stuff, and it jams up on them or whatever, I mean, or it screws up their weapon system, or you just can't put it back in there like they can. And so, and we were, and so you can't ban it back. So it was like, we just downloaded every bit, and we had to go around inspecting, like cross-inspecting vehicles. I would inspect their vehicle, make sure they didn't forget not one round of ammunition, and it all got thrown in the pit, and I don't know what happened to it after that. So
what are you thinking of putting all this in the pit in Arabia?
well, we didn't care about that, because we were sort of, I don't think the Arabians, they weren't very welcoming anyway. And so that wasn't a big concern of ours.
It's not public information what this pit is it?
Oh, I'm sure they blew it all. I mean, I don't think they
just
just
blown up.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
They. I mean, the army. This was like we weren't the only ones throwing our ammo in there.
Oh, okay.
There's this huge pit, and everybody that came through there, they were throwing. And when the pit got so full, then EOD was going to blow it.
Oh yeah. Okay.
And then they, you know, so they were just. They had bunches of pits in it, depending on what kind of unit you were, I think, or how this one needed to be filled up more. I mean, because they were throwing. I mean, the tanks are throwing tank rounds in there, and it's just everything was getting thrown.
Were you there when they blew the?
No. But sad story was why we were so that fuel dump, after that fuel dump, so these convoys are coming through and they're fueling up, and then they're lining up along the supply route afterwards, waiting for everybody in their convoy to get filled up, right? And we kept saying to them, don't go outside the engineer tape because it hasn't been cleared, because there's cluster bombs that have been spread out all over there. And at least once a day, we were there for a week, at least once a day, somebody would have to take a dump, and they'd walk outside of there and they'd step on a mine, and they'd have to call in a medevac. And it's just like, it's just such a waste. You know, you go through the whole thing, you make it through the whole deal, and then you go step on one of your own mines. Because those are American mines that were out there. You know, so it's just, that was a bad thing.
Ever come across, did you make any contact with any Iraqis?
We saw a lot of wounded guys. Actually, got a funny story. There's a guy named, I can't remember his name. He was a mechanic. And we had this old recovery vehicles called VTRs there, because we didn't need M88s for these vehicles. They had these VTRs, and one day he was told, this was after the war, the ceasefire had already happened, but we were still in Iraq. He was like, man, why can't I remember his name? His name is, I want to say Bean, but I know it wasn't Bean. It started with a B. But he was told, you got a broke down vehicle out there, you got to go pick it up. So he's driving down the road and he sees these 3 Iraqi guys that are walking towards, there's a prisoner of war camp, like a half mile down the road or wherever. So he pulls over to him and says, get on, I'll give you a ride. He said one of them was limping or he was wounded or something, so he said, I'll give you a ride. So they jump on, he drives them down. So the guy at the gate, they get on, and the MPs take him. The guy at the gate says, give me your name and your unit and all that stuff. So he does, and then he goes about his business. Well, about a couple weeks later, when we were in Saudi Arabia, Colin Powell was there, and they wake him up. He'd been up all night working on a vehicle or something, and they said, you got to go to this thing with Colin Powell. And he's like, me? Why me? I'm like, they like put on a clean uniform. I'm like, I got the cleanest one. You know, he's just a grease monkey, you know. So another person borrowed him a uniform to put on to go to be in this parade, and he was so mad. When he gets there, long story short, he gets a Bronze Star for single-handedly capturing 3 Iraqi soldiers. And they pin it on him in a uniform, and it doesn't even have his name on it. It's got somebody else's name on the uniform. He's just giving these guys a ride.
What was the attitude of the people? What did you make any contact with the Arabians in Arabia?
No, only a few times going to like stores and stuff like that.
Yeah. What was their attitude?
I think they could take us or leave us.
Yeah. Have interpreters with you?
No.
Okay. How'd you talk to them, the local people? They speak English? Or?
Yeah, they speak some English. You just point.
Yeah.
And then you hold out the funny money and they take some.
Tell me about coming home.
Coming home is good. It was really good because, you know, it kind of was a whirlwind thing. After we dumped that ammo and all that stuff, and then we rolled down to Tehran or wherever it was that we went. We went someplace and got on trucks, and then they brought us down to Khobar Towers.
Yeah.
And we were supposed to clean up our vehicles, and we're supposed to clean up our gear. We're supposed to clean up all of our TA-50 and all that kind of stuff. And I said, and they had a post office there. I said, the heck with this. I put all my stuff in my duffel bags, and I put my address on it and brought it to the post office and mailed it home. I said, I'm not cleaning any of this crap. They went out there, had guys out there in garbage cans, you know, scrubbing it in garbage cans and stuff. And then, no, it's still dirty. You got to clean it up. I was like, pfft. I packed it up and mailed it home. And then people said, what did you do with your stuff? I said, I mailed it home. You did what? It's like, you didn't need it here anymore. It's like, I'm not washing that crap. So that's what I did there. And then we got, finally we got on the planes to come home, which a lot of people, I just found out about this recently. Tower Air is the name of the airline, which was owned by Donald Trump at the time, who all he asked the government to do was pay for the fuel. He paid the pilots and the stewards and stewardesses and all the food and all that kind of stuff. Tower Air paid for that. He just wanted, and the U.S. government paid the gas, and he was going back and forth, bringing the troops home. A lot of people don't know about that. But yeah, so that was kind of the neatest flight I'd ever been on, because it was full of, our whole unit was together on that plane, and it was like, I mean, guys were sleeping on the floor. They couldn't serve us no meals and stuff. So finally they said, everybody's got to get into a seat somewhere so they can, I know you guys are hungry, so that they can feed you. So, but otherwise, guys were like laying on the floors and laying all over everywhere in the air-conditioned airplane and stuff. So it was kind of neat the way they had it arranged. We landed in Savannah, and it was like midnight or 1 o'clock in the morning, something like that. Oh, we did have a stopover in New York to refuel or something, and they let us get off, and they had milk and donuts, which was kind of crazy because we hadn't had that in a long time. And so we got to Savannah, and when we got to Savannah at Hunter Army Airfield, is where we landed, and then we just went, and they had these tents set up where we came through. They put a tag on your weapon, and you put your weapon in a box. You didn't have to go back to the arms room and do that whole nightmare, and we would take care of it later. And so we put all of our weapons in there, and we jumped on buses, and we said, wow, look at all the grass. Thought that was pretty intense. And so we got back, and we went to, I think it's called Cottrell Field, and all of our families were on the other side. So, and it was like 2 o'clock in the morning at that point. And so we had some kind of formation, and they welcomed us back, and there was a band playing or whatever, and then they said, be to work at like, I think it was 8 o'clock in the morning on, it was like 5 days from now or something like that. Yeah, I think we landed on it was like early Friday morning. They said, be to work on Tuesday morning or something like that. And they let us go. So that was pretty neat.
Yeah. And how long in the Army?
How long was I in the Army?
Yeah.
20 years and 26 days.
What'd you do after Desert Storm?
After Desert Storm, and then I was there for, I was at Fort Stewart until 94. We talked about that, 94 to 97 in Germany. Then I came back to Fort Riley, Kansas. I kind of stalled out at the E6. I was having a hard time getting promoted to E7, and I was volunteering to do a lot of things. And in the meantime, we had transitioned from the Vulcan air defense gun to Bradley fighting vehicles. And because it was an interim solution for the short-range air defense, they were looking to get these vehicles that had Stinger missile launchers on them. And so in the meantime, we were just going to go to Bradley's. And so when they did that, and they changed the MOS, you couldn't be colorblind anymore. So long story short, I was trying to do all these things, and I'd been a platoon sergeant as an E6 for a year and a half and all these things, and my career manager wanted to send me to Korea and make me a squad leader again. I'm like, that is not going to be good for my career. So I was going to get out, but then I found out you're not even supposed to be colorblind in this job. They changed the qualifications for it, so they should have reclassified me. So I said, hey, I'm colorblind. I said it to my first sergeant. So they sent me to get a bunch of crazy tests that I never even knew they had for colorblindness. And the Army said, yep, you're colorblind. And they made me a photojournalist. And so I went to journalism school at the Defense Information School in Fort Meade, Maryland, and got promoted to E7. And I spent the rest of my career in Atlanta, Georgia, in the 44th Military History Detachment.
What did you do there?
Basically, we trained Guard and Reserve Military History Detachments, because by this time, that was 2002, and 2003, the second Gulf War started. So we were rotating military history detachments over there, collecting the historical data and stuff. So, but because they're reserve and guard, they would go do their tour over there, and when they come back, they'd break up those units and form a new unit. And so those guys, there is no school. I mean, we were the school for military history detachment. So then we'd have to bring them to a training event and train them how to do what they have to do. So what we had to do was basically me and my boss, we developed a training program in concert with the U.S. Army Reserve Office of Military History. Because we were in Atlanta, we were able to use Civil War battlefields as a practical exercise and stuff. And we sort of brought their TONE, Table of Organizational Equipment, up to 21st century standards. I mean, they were only authorized like 35 millimeter cameras and tape recorders, you know. So we brought them into the digital age and how they need to be authorized, these computers and these digital cameras and these ways of collecting, you know, modern stuff. And we contracted with a software company to build software organization system because we figured out that 2/3 of the military history detachment's time is taken up just trying to organize the stuff that they collected. So we wanted to automate that system, and we rewrote the Army field manuals on military history collections, things like that. So it was a busy last about 5 years of my career.
When were you discharged?
January 2006.
What did you do since then?
Since then, I worked for my church as an administrator for a while, and then I went to Atlanta Christian College and got my bachelor's degree. And then, not too long after that, I got a job here in Bartlesville with the Voice of the Martyrs out there. So doing that, and I'm actually getting ready to, this fall, I'm starting my master's degree. Based on my Gulf War experiences and the injuries that I sustained over there. I didn't get a Purple Heart. I just got hurt in the line of duty and stuff. So they kind of consider that. It's not being wounded, but I got this scholarship based on getting injured as far as in the line of duty in a combat zone kind of thing. So during my military career, I mean, I fractured vertebrae in my back, and I screwed my shoulder up, and I've had to have knee surgery, and just being in combat MOS it messes your body up. So based on that, I got a scholarship for my master's degree, so I'm like, it'd kind of be stupid not to take advantage of that.
Would you join the Army again?
Oh, sure. I loved the Army. I think the Army made me the person, and some people might not think it's a positive, but it's made me the person that I am. I have so many good memories of the Army, and met so many people and saw so many things that, is there maybe some details that I might change about it? Yeah, but I don't regret it, and I'm reaping some benefits from it now. So
I'd like to do a word association. I'll give you some words and you give me your reaction. First one's basic training.
Mothballs. Everything smelled like mothballs.
M60.
The pig.
Ansbach.
Oh, gosh. Beer Fest.
137th Armor.
Oh, First Sergeant Husky.
Tell me about him.
Well, he was an old Vietnam vet that couldn't make Sergeant Major because he was overweight. But he'd been around so long, and he'd had such a storied career that they didn't kick him out either, but he just wasn't going to get promoted. But I have a couple of vivid memories of him. My best friend was his driver, Jeep driver, and he wanted him to drive up this hill so he could watch the battle. We were out training in Hohenfels, Germany. He watched the war games. And my friend, it was too steep, he couldn't drive up it. And so he kept having to back down, and by the third time, First Sergeant said, my friend's name was Fontaine, and he said, Fontaine, you get out and watch how I do it, and when I get up to the top of the hill, you can walk up. So First Sergeant started driving up that hill, and he drove it in such a way where that hardtop Jeep rolled over and rolled back down the hill and landed right on its wheels. And Fontaine ran over to there, and he opened the door laughing. He said, okay, Fontaine, it's your turn again. But the guys in the barracks that we were in, there was no latrine on the third floor. So those guys that started drinking beer up there, what they'd do is they'd piss in a beer bottle, and then they'd dump it out the window, and it would go down the gutter. And the gutter spout ended right near the front door. And so First Sergeant Husky, and he'd always go out there and smoke cigarettes. And one day I was on duty, and I was standing out there smoking a cigarette with him. He says, "Damn, Huth, why does it always smell like piss out here?" I said, "I don't know, First Sergeant."
Vulcan.
Oh, just a nightmare.
Saudi Arabia.
Nightmare Part 2.
Iraq.
Don't know what all the fuss is over because I never want to go back.
Saddam Hussein.
Yeah, criminal.
Norman Schwarzkopf.
Oh, I'd say he's a hero.
Colin Powell.
Smart man.
Margaret Thatcher.
Good friend of Ronald Reagan.
George Bush.
I'd say another American hero.
How do you want to be remembered?
I want to be remembered as, firstly, someone who loves Jesus, and that I was a good father and a husband before they remembered me as any kind of soldier. I mean, as a soldier, I want to be remembered as somebody that I wasn't G.I. Joe, but I knew what I was doing, and I get the job done. I was good, reliable NCO.
Anything else?
No, that's it.
Well, sir, this is an excellent interview.
Oh, good.
I want to thank you for your service and thank you for the interview. And again, this is August 8th, 2018. My name is Joe Todd. This has been an interview with Mitch Huth in Bartlesville, Oklahoma. Thank you.
Thank you.